Captain Lee Dongyun stood on the bridge of the New Seoul, watching the massive structure grow larger on the main screen. After 8 months of traveling through deep space, they had finally reached their destination. The thing floating in the darkness ahead of them was bigger than any city he had ever seen. "Captain, we are getting closer to the target," said Yoon Jae-won from the communications station. His fingers moved quickly over the control panel. "The energy readings are getting stronger." Donghyun nodded and walked closer to the screen. The structure looked like nothing humans had ever built. It was shaped like a giant wheel spinning slowly in space. Blue lights ran along its surface in patterns that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The metal looked smooth and perfect, without any signs of damage or age. "How big is it, Park?" Donghyun asked. Chief Engineer Park Min-ho checked his instruments. "About 15 kilometers across, Captain. The hull appears to be made of some unknown metal alloy. And Captain, this thing is old, really old. My scanners suggest it has been here for millions of years." Dr. Kim Haeon looked up from her science station. As the team's xenobiologist, she had studied every piece of data they had about this mysterious structure. "The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. It's not nuclear, not fusion, not antimatter. Whatever powers this thing, we have never seen it before." Donghyun had been chosen to lead this mission because of his experience with first contact situations. 3 years ago, he had been part of the team that made peaceful contact with the Centauri Trade Alliance. But this was different. This structure had been sending signals into space for who knows how long, and no one had ever answered. The signals had been detected by Earth's deep space monitoring stations 2 years ago. They were not random. They had patterns, mathematical sequences, and what appeared to be star maps. The signals seemed to be calling someone home. "Sir, I am detecting movement near the structure," Jae-won said. "Something is coming out of what looks like a docking bay." On the screen, they could see small objects moving toward their ship. As they got closer, the objects revealed themselves to be some kind of automated guides. They were sleek and silver, about the size of small shuttles, and they moved with perfect precision. "They want us to follow them," Haeon said, studying the movement patterns. "Look how they are positioning themselves. They are creating a path." Donghyun made his decision quickly. "Min-ho, prepare a boarding shuttle. Take Haeon and Jae-won with you. I want full scanning equipment and emergency supplies for 72 hours. "Captain, shouldn't you stay with the ship?" Min-ho asked. "No. If this is what I think it is, if this is really a first contact situation with an ancient civilization, then the captain needs to be there." Donghyun turned to the backup crew. "Lieutenant Nam, you have the bridge. Keep the ship at a safe distance and monitor our signals. If you lose contact for more than 6 hours, return to Earth immediately." Lieutenant Nam Soo-young nodded. "Understood, sir." The boarding shuttle detached from the New Seoul 30 minutes later. The automated guides led them toward the massive structure. As they got closer, Donghyun could see more details. The surface was covered in symbols and patterns that seemed to shift and change as he watched them. The blue lights pulsed in a rhythm. That reminded him of something, but he could not remember what. "Captain, I am picking up some kind of scanning beam," Jae-won reported. "It's very gentle, almost like it's trying not to alarm us." The docking bay was huge. Their small shuttle looked like a toy inside it. The guides led them to a landing platform that seemed to be made specifically for their ship's size and design. As soon as they landed, the bay began to fill with breathable atmosphere. "That's impossible," Haeon whispered. "How does it know what kind of air we breathe?" "It scanned us," Donghyun said. "It knows what we are." The airlock opened and they stepped into a corridor that was clearly built for beings much taller than humans. The ceiling was at least 5 meters high, and the walls were smooth and curved. The same blue lights that covered the outside of the structure ran along the walls here, providing gentle illumination. They had walked for about 10 minutes when they heard it. A sound like metal feet on metal floor. It was rhythmic, precise, and getting closer. "Something is coming," Min-ho whispered, checking his scanner. "Multiple contacts, large, moving in formation." They rounded a corner and stopped, standing in. The corridor ahead of them were 3 figures that were clearly not human. They were tall, at least 3 meters high, with bodies that looked like they were made of polished silver. Their faces had no features except for 2 blue lights where eyes should be. The figures did not move. They simply stood there watching. The humans with those glowing blue sensors. "Hello," Donghyun said, stepping forward slowly. "We are explorers from Earth. We received your signals and came to make contact." One of the figures tilted its head slightly. When it spoke, its voice was mechanical but clear. "Biological entities detected. Species unknown. Scanning for threat assessment." The blue lights in its eyes began to pulse faster. The other 2 figures spread out, moving to flank the humans. Their movements were smooth and silent, like liquid, metal. "We are peaceful," Haeyeon said quickly. "We come in friendship." "Scanning complete," the first figure said. "Threat level, moderate to high. Unknown species with advanced technology. Initiating containment protocols." More figures appeared from hidden doors in the walls. First 5, then 10, then 20. They all looked identical, and they all had the same glowing blue sensors for eyes. They formed a perfect circle around the humans. Donghyun felt his heart racing. This was not going the way he had hoped. "Jaewon, can you boost the translator? Maybe there is a communication problem." "I am trying, Captain," Jaewon said, working frantically with his equipment. "But I think they understand us perfectly well. They just do not trust us." The figures began to emit a low humming sound. It was barely audible at first, but it grew stronger. Donghyun felt a strange tingling sensation in his head. The others were feeling it too. Haeyeon swayed on her feet, and Minho reached out to steady her. "Some kind of stunning field," Minho said through gritted teeth. "They are trying to disable us." The blue lights in the figure's eyes suddenly changed to red. Their voices spoke in unison, creating an eerie chorus that echoed through the corridor. "Unauthorized access to protected facility. Biological contamination risk assessed as significant. Initiating defensive measures to protect the Nexus." Donghyun realized with growing alarm that they were not being welcomed. They were being treated as invaders. And from the way more figures kept appearing from the walls, he was beginning to understand that they were vastly outnumbered. The stunning effect was getting stronger. His vision was beginning to blur, and he could hear Haeyeon gasping for breath. Whatever these robot guardians were planning to do, they needed to find a way to communicate before it was too late. The ancient structure held its secrets tightly, and it seemed determined not to let them go. The humming sound grew louder and more intense. Captain Lee Donghyun felt his knees getting weak as the strange energy washed over him. The robot guardians stood perfectly still around them, their red optical sensors glowing brighter with each passing second. "Captain, the stunning field is getting stronger," Park Min-ho said, his voice strained. He was supporting Dr. Kim Haeyeon, who was swaying dangerously. "My scanner shows the energy is affecting our nervous systems directly." Yoon Jae-won was still working frantically with his communication equipment, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air in the corridor. "I am trying to establish a proper communication link, but their systems are so advanced. It is like trying to talk to a quantum computer with smoke signals." More robot guardians emerged from the walls. Donghyun watched in growing alarm as panels he had not even noticed slid open to reveal hidden alcoves. Each alcove contained another silver figure, and they stepped out in perfect synchronization. Soon there were 50 of them, then 100. The guardians moved with fluid precision that was both beautiful and terrifying. They arranged themselves in geometric patterns around the humans, circles within circles, triangles, and complex shapes that seemed to have meaning. Their movements were so coordinated that they looked like parts of a single massive organism. "This is not random," Haeyeon managed to whisper through the disorientation. "Look at their formation. It is mathematical, precise. They are following some kind of protocol." Donghyun forced himself to focus despite the increasing pressure in his head. The guardians were not attacking them directly. They were containing them, studying them, treating them like a problem that needed to be solved carefully. Unknown biological entities, the Guardians said in unison, their mechanical voices creating a chorus that echoed through the vast corridor. Species classification requires additional data. Scanning for genetic markers. A new type of energy swept over the humans. This one felt different from the stunning field. It was cooler, more analytical. Dongyun could almost feel invisible, fingers examining every cell in his body. Genetic scan complete, announced one of the Guardians that seemed to be acting as their leader. It was slightly taller than the others and had additional markings on its silver surface. Species exhibit standard carbon-based biology. Brain structure shows high intelligence. Technology level, intermediate. Threat assessment, upgrading to high. High threat assessment. The words echoed from every Guardian simultaneously. Initiating. Advanced containment protocols. The stunning field doubled in intensity. Hyon collapsed completely and Minho barely caught her before she hit the floor. Jaewon stumbled and dropped his communication equipment, the devices clattering on the metal floor. Wait! Dongyun called out desperately, fighting through the waves of disorientation. We are not here to cause harm. We received your signals, your calls. We came because you invited us. The leader Guardian tilted its head, processing this information. No invitations were transmitted. This facility operates under strict isolation protocols. Unauthorized access is forbidden. But the signals, Jaewon gasped, trying to reach for his fallen equipment. The mathematical sequences, the star maps, they have been broadcasting for years. All transmissions are automated maintenance signals, the leader replied. They are not intended for external species contact. Your presence here represents a security breach. Dongyun realized with growing horror that they had made a terrible mistake. What Earth scientists had interpreted as a welcome message was actually something completely different. They were trespassers in a place that was never meant to be found by outsiders. The Guardians began to emit a different sound now. It was higher pitched and had a rhythm that reminded Dongyun of a countdown. Around the perimeter of their formation, new Guardians appeared. These ones looked different. They were bulkier, with obvious weapon systems built into their arms. Threat neutralization protocols activated, the leader announced, preparing to eliminate contamination risk. No, wait, Haeyeon managed to say, pulling herself up with Minho's help. Look at your scans again. Look at our genetic markers. There has to be something familiar. The leader paused. For a moment, the only sound was the humming of the energy field. Then it spoke again. Genetic markers show standard Earth-human patterns. No matches found in approved species database. Elimination sequence will commence in 60 seconds. Jaewon finally managed to grab his communication equipment. His hands shook as he worked to boost the signal strength. Captain, I'm getting a response from the new soul. Park Minho on the ship is detecting massive energy buildups throughout the structure. What kind of energy buildups? Donghyun asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. The kind that suggests they are powering up weapon systems, Jaewon replied grimly. Really big ones. The countdown continued. The weapon-equipped Guardians raised their arms and Donghyun could see energy beginning to gather at the tips of their appendages. The light was the same blue as the structure's running lights, but much brighter and more focused. 45 seconds until threat. Elimination, the leader announced. Desperation gave Donghyun clarity. He looked around the corridor, really seeing it for the first time since the Guardians had appeared. The walls were covered in symbols and patterns, just like the outside of the structure. But now, under stress and with his adrenaline running high, some of those symbols looked familiar. The markings on the walls, he said to Haeyeon. Do they remind you of anything? She squinted through her disorientation, following his gaze. They look like navigation charts, star patterns. But that is impossible. These predate human civilization by millions of years. 30 seconds until threat elimination. The energy weapons were almost fully charged now. The blue light was so bright it hurt to look at directly. Donghyun could feel the heat radiating from them even at a distance. Then something clicked in his memory. The patterns on the walls, the mathematical sequences in the signals. Even the geometric formations the Guardians had arranged themselves in. They reminded him of something his grandfather had shown him when he was very young. His grandfather had been a historian who specialized in ancient Korean astronomy. He had taught young Dong-hyun about the old ways of navigation, about how their ancestors had found their way across vast distances using only the stars, and mathematical calculations passed down through generations. 15 seconds until threat elimination. The realization hit him like lightning. Those were not just random symbols on the walls. They were star charts, navigation aids, and some of them, impossibly, matched patterns he had learned as a child. 10 seconds until threat elimination. Dong-hyun made a decision that would either save them all or get them killed faster. He opened his mouth and began to recite the ancient Korean astronomical calculations his grandfather had taught him decades ago. The words flowed from his memory in the old language, numbers and star positions that had guided travelers across the Earth's oceans and continents for thousands of years. His voice grew stronger as the familiar rhythms came back to him. The energy weapons stopped charging. Every guardian in the corridor turned their optical sensors toward him. The leader stepped forward, its mechanical voice different now, less threatening, more curious. Acoustic pattern recognized. Initiating deep archive scan. Please maintain current vocalization pattern. Dong-hyun kept speaking, not daring to stop now that he had their attention. Behind him, he could hear Hyeon whisper in amazement. Captain, whatever you are doing, do not stop. Their weapon systems are powering down. The ancient words continued to flow, carrying with them the hope that somehow, impossibly, they might contain the key to survival. Captain Lee Dong-hyun continued reciting the ancient Korean star calculations, while the robot guardians stood motionless around them. Their optical sensors had shifted from threatening red to a curious blue-green color. The leader guardian remained perfectly still, its head tilted slightly as if listening to every word. Archive scan in progress, the leader announced. Acoustic patterns show partial matches to protected databases, analyzing linguistic structures and mathematical sequences. Dr. Kim Haeon slowly pulled herself to her feet with Park Min-ho's help. The stunning field had weakened considerably, though she still felt dizzy and disoriented. Captain, keep talking. Whatever those words mean to them, it is buying us time. Yoon Jae-won worked quickly to re-establish contact with the new soul. His communication equipment had been damaged when he dropped it, but he managed to get a weak signal through. New soul, this is the boarding party. We have made contact with automated defense systems. Situation is complicated. The reply came through with heavy static. Boarding party, this is New Soul. We are reading massive energy fluctuations throughout the target structure. Are you in danger? Not immediately, Jae-won replied quietly, not wanting to disturb Dong-hyun's recitation. But the situation could change quickly. Maintain your distance and be ready for emergency extraction. The Guardians' analysis continued for several more minutes. During this time, more Guardians emerged from the walls. But these were different from the weapon-equipped ones they had seen before. These new arrivals were taller and more elegant, with intricate patterns carved into their silver surfaces. Secondary archive access granted, one of the new Guardians announced. Cross-referencing acoustic patterns with historical linguistic databases. Dong-hyun felt his throat getting dry, but he did not dare stop speaking. The astronomical calculations seemed endless, flowing from memories he had not accessed in decades. His grandfather's patient voice echoed in his mind, teaching him about the old ways of navigation that had guided their ancestors across vast distances. Suddenly, the leader Guardian stepped closer. Its optical sensors were now pulsing with a bright golden light that none of them had seen before. Preliminary match confirmed, it announced. Acoustic patterns contain embedded star map references consistent with SEED protocol navigation codes, initiating Level 7 security verification. SEED protocol, Haeon whispered. What could that mean? The corridor around them began to change. Panels in the walls slid away to reveal vast chambers beyond. The lighting shifted from the standard blue to a warm golden glow that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Dong-hyun's words. Warning, the leader Guardian said. its voice now carrying a note of urgency. Level 7 verification requires central AI authorization. All personnel must remain in position while connection is established. The floor beneath their feet began to vibrate. The vibration grew stronger, becoming a deep thrumming that seemed to come from the very heart of the massive structure. Emergency lights began flashing throughout the visible sections of the facility. "Captain," Jaewon called out in alarm. "My scanners are showing energy readings off the scale. Something big is happening." More Guardians were arriving now. Hundreds of them flowed through the corridors like a silver tide. They arranged themselves in complex formations that extended as far as the humans could see. Some carried obvious weapons, others held devices whose purpose was unclear. But what alarmed Donghyun most was that they were all different. The first Guardians had looked identical, like mass-produced security units. These new arrivals showed individual variations in their design, as if they had been crafted for specific purposes. "Central AI awakening sequence initiated," the leader announced. "All biological entities must maintain current position. Any deviation from established location will result in immediate termination." The thrumming grew louder. Through the open panels in the walls, they could see vast machinery coming to life. Lights raced along conduits that stretched into the distance. The air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. "How long has it been asleep?" Minho asked, his engineering mind trying to comprehend the scale of what they were witnessing. "Unknown," the leader replied. "Central AI has been in dormant cycle for approximately 57,000 Earth years. Last awakening was triggered by arrival of second seed." "Second seed," Haeon repeated. "There were others before us?" Before the Guardian could answer, the thrumming reached a crescendo and then suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was absolute and terrifying. Even the Guardians remained completely motionless. Then a new voice filled the air. It was not mechanical like the Guardians' voices. It sounded ancient and wise, with undertones that seemed to resonate directly in their minds. "Who dares wake the Keeper of Seeds?" The voice spoke in perfect Korean, which should have been impossible. Donghyun stopped his recitation for the first time since the crisis began. The sudden silence felt dangerous. "Speak, children of distant stars," the voice continued. "What words of the old navigation do you carry? What songs of the deep voyages do you remember?" Donghyun found his voice, though it trembled slightly. "We are explorers from Earth. We received signals from this facility and came to investigate. I was reciting star calculations my grandfather taught me when I was young." "Earth," the voice repeated, and there was something like joy in it. "The third seed grows well. Your grandfather was wise to teach you the old ways. The songs of navigation are precious things, not to be forgotten." The golden lights throughout the corridor grew brighter. The Guardians all turned their optical sensors toward a point high above them, as if looking at something the humans could not see. "But you arrive at a time of great danger," the voice continued, and now it carried a note of warning. "The ancient enemy stirs. The destroyers of worlds gather their strength once more. The Nexus has awakened because the time of testing approaches." "We do not understand," Haeon said. "What enemy? What test?" "You will understand soon, daughter of the third seed. But first you must prove you are ready to inherit what we have protected for so long. The robots marked you as threats because they did not recognize what you carry within your blood and bones." The leader Guardian stepped forward again. "Central AI, shall we proceed with full verification protocols?" "Yes," the ancient voice replied. "Let us see if the children of Earth are truly ready to become what they were always meant to be." The thrumming began again, louder than before, and the humans realized their true test was just beginning. The thrumming sound filled every corner of the massive corridor. Captain Lee Dong-hyun felt it in his bones, in his blood, in the very core of his being. Around them, the robot Guardians stood perfectly still, while golden light pulsed through the walls in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Verification protocols initiating," the central AI announced. Its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Scanning for genetic markers specific to third seed population. analyzing cultural memory patterns embedded in biological neural networks. Dr. Kim Haeon grabbed Donghyun's arm. Captain, what is it talking about, cultural memory patterns? Before he could answer, a new sensation washed over them. It was different from the stunning field the Guardians had used earlier. This felt like gentle fingers searching through his memories, looking for something specific. Images flashed in Donghyun's mind, his grandfather's weathered hands pointing at star charts spread across their kitchen table. The old man's voice teaching him about ancient navigation techniques that had guided Korean sailors across dangerous seas. Mathematical formulas that seemed to contain more than just numbers. Fascinating, the central AI said. The genetic carriers maintain strong connections to inherited knowledge systems. The third seed has preserved the navigation codes well despite 50,000 years of separation. Park Min-ho's engineering background helped him process what was happening faster than the others. It is scanning our memories, looking for specific information that our ancestors somehow carried with them. Not just information, the central AI corrected. Knowledge that was carefully embedded in your species' collective memory before the Great Seeding. Navigation songs, mathematical sequences, star patterns, all designed to guide you back here when you were ready. Yoon Jae-won managed to re-establish better contact with the new soul. Captain Park on the ship reports that energy readings are stabilizing, but he is detecting some kind of scanning beam focused on our location. The leader Guardian moved closer to them. Its golden optical sensors were now pulsing in perfect synchronization with Donghyun's heartbeat. Central AI, preliminary scans show positive matches for embedded navigation codes. Subject demonstrates knowledge of ancient astronomical calculation methods. Excellent, the AI replied. Now we must test the depth of their connection to the old ways. Captain Donghyun, I want you to close your eyes and let your mind follow the star patterns. Do not think. Simply remember what your grandfather taught. You. Donghyun hesitated. Trusting an alien intelligence with his mind seemed dangerous, but they were trapped here with hundreds of robot guardians, and this appeared to be their only chance for survival. He closed his eyes and let his thoughts drift back to those long afternoons in his grandfather's house. The old man had been passionate about Korean maritime history and astronomy. He had spent hours teaching young Donghyun about the methods their ancestors had used to navigate across vast distances. As he relaxed into the memories, something extraordinary happened. The star charts his grandfather had shown him began to make sense in ways they never had before. The mathematical sequences were not just navigation aids, they were coordinates, maps to specific locations in deep space. The memories are unlocking, the central AI said with obvious satisfaction. The genetic carriers are accessing inherited knowledge systems successfully, proceeding to level 8 verification. New images flooded Donghyun's mind. Star maps that showed not just Earth's solar system, but dozens of other systems connected by invisible lines. Mathematical formulas that described faster-than-light travel methods humanity had not yet discovered. Navigation songs in languages that sounded ancient but somehow familiar. This is impossible, he whispered, his eyes still closed. These memories are not mine. I never learned these things. They are not your personal memories, the AI explained gently. They are species memories, knowledge that was embedded in your people's collective unconscious 50,000 years ago. Every human carries fragments of this information, but most never access it. Haeon was watching the readings on her scanner with growing amazement. Captain, your brain activity is off the charts. It is like your mind is accessing databases that should not exist. The memories continued to flow. Donghyun saw images of ancient ships that sailed not across oceans, but across the void of space. He saw his ancestors, but they were not the primitive humans he had learned about in school. These were people with advanced technology, guided by beings of incredible wisdom. The precursors, he said aloud, the word coming from memories that were not his own. They were the ones who guided humanity to Earth. Yes, the central AI confirmed. The precursors were the builders of the Nexus, the creators of the Seed Protocol. When they realized their own civilization was ending, they chose 3 species to preserve and guide. Humanity was the third and most promising. The leader guardian stepped even closer. Central AI, the subject is accessing deep genetic memories, successfully. Shall we proceed to final verification? Not yet, the AI replied. First, he must understand the full truth of what he carries within him. More images flooded Donghyun's consciousness. He saw Earth not as humanity's birth world, but as a carefully chosen refuge. The precursors had selected it specifically for its isolation and protective characteristics. They had guided early humans there, and then hidden all traces of their advanced origins. We were not primitives who evolved on Earth, he said, understanding dawning in his voice. We were refugees, survivors placed there by the precursors. Correct, the AI said. Earth was chosen as a sanctuary where humanity could develop slowly and safely, away from the ancient enemies that destroyed the precursors. The navigation codes were embedded in your cultural traditions to ensure that when you finally developed space travel, you would eventually find your way back here. Minho was studying his engineering scanners with a puzzled expression. Captain, the energy readings are changing again. Something big is powering up deep inside this structure. The memories showed Donghyun why. The Nexus was not just a monument or a meeting place. It was a massive defensive platform designed to protect the growing seed species from threats that still existed in the galaxy. The ancient enemy, he said, opening his eyes to look directly at the leader guardian. They are still out there, are they not? The golden light in the guardian's sensors dimmed slightly. Affirmative. Long-range sensors have detected signs of their return. The Devourers are awakening after 50,000 years of dormancy. The Nexus has activated because the time of the final test approaches. Final test? Heian asked. The test? That will determine whether humanity is ready to inherit the mantle of galactic guardians, the central AI explained. Whether you are prepared to protect the younger species, as the precursors once protected you. The thrumming reached a new intensity, and through the open panels in the walls they could see vast weapon systems coming online. The Nexus was preparing for war. But first, the AI continued, you must complete the verification process. Captain Donghyun, speak the words of final passage, the star song that will confirm your people's readiness to join the ancient covenant. Donghyun felt the words rising in his throat, pulled from memories older than recorded history. As he began to speak, he realized that everything his grandfather had taught him, everything his people had carried in their songs and stories for thousands of years, had been leading to this moment. The words flowed like music, and the guardians all raised their heads as if hearing the voice of their creators once again. Captain Lee Donghyun spoke the ancient words that flowed from somewhere deeper than memory. The star song poured from his lips in a language he had never learned but somehow knew perfectly. Each word seemed to resonate through the massive structure, causing the golden lights to pulse brighter with every syllable. The robot guardians stood motionless around them, their optical sensors now blazing with brilliant light. As Donghyun continued the star song, more guardians emerged from hidden alcoves throughout the vast corridor. But these were different from any they had seen before. These new arrivals were elegant and graceful, their silver bodies decorated with intricate patterns that seemed to tell stories of ancient voyages across the stars. Some carried crystalline devices that hummed with barely contained energy. Others held what appeared to be works of art, beautiful sculptures that somehow conveyed deep meaning. The Keepers awaken, the central AI announced, its voice filled with something like joy. The guardians of deep memory emerged to witness the return of the third seed. Dr. Kim Haeon watched her scanners in amazement as energy readings throughout the structure stabilized into complex, harmonious patterns. Captain, whatever you are saying, it is causing the entire facility to come fully online. Systems that have been dormant for thousands of years are activating. Park Min-ho's engineering expertise allowed him to recognize some of the patterns appearing on his instruments. The power distribution is incredible. This structure has energy sources I cannot even identify, and they are all synchronizing with the rhythm of the star song. Yoon Jae-won maintained contact with the new soul while monitoring the unfolding situation. Captain Park on the ship reports that the structure's exterior is changing. Sections that appeared to be decorative are revealed to be advanced sensor arrays and weapon systems. This place is not just a monument, it is a fortress. As Dong-hyun neared the end of the Star Song, the corridor around them began to transform. The walls became transparent, revealing vast chambers that stretched into the distance. Each chamber contained different wonders. Some held massive libraries with information, stored in crystalline matrices. Others contained workshops where robotic artisans had been crafting beautiful objects for millennia. But the most impressive chamber was directly ahead of them. It was enormous, easily large enough to contain several city blocks. At its center stood a pillar of pure light that reached from floor to ceiling. The light pulsed with the rhythm of a massive heartbeat. The central AI's core chamber, the leader guardian explained. The heart of the nexus, where all knowledge of the precursors is stored. Dong-hyun finished the Star Song with words that spoke of journeys across impossible distances and the hope of eventual return. As the last syllable faded, the pillar of light began to change. The pure radiance took on form and substance, coalescing into a massive holographic figure. The central AI appeared as a being of incredible beauty and ancient wisdom. Its form seemed to shift between different humanoid shapes as if it contained the essence of multiple species. Sometimes it looked human, sometimes like beings they had never seen before. But always, it radiated a sense of vast intelligence and benevolent purpose. "Welcome home, children of the third seed," the central AI said, its voice now clearly coming from the holographic figure. "I am the keeper of seeds, guardian of the precursor legacy. I have waited 57,000 years for this moment." The figure stepped down from the pillar of light and approached them. As it drew closer, they could see details that took their breath away. The AI's eyes held the depth of space itself, filled with stars and nebulae that seemed to swirl in living patterns. "You have many questions," the keeper said gently. "But first, let me show you the truth of your heritage." The transparent walls around them lit up with images. They saw the galaxy as it had been 50,000 years ago, filled with thriving civilizations and peaceful trade between countless species. They saw the precursors, beings of incredible advancement who had devoted themselves to nurturing younger races. The galaxy was a garden then, the keeper explained. The precursors had spent millions of years guiding species from primitiveness to enlightenment. Hundreds of civilizations flourished under their protection. The images changed, showing darkness spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Entire star systems went dark. Civilizations that had existed for thousands of years simply vanished. Then came the Devourers, the keeper continued, its voice heavy with ancient sorrow. Beings of pure hunger who consumed not just planets and stars but life itself. They fed on the energy patterns that create consciousness and intelligence. Haeyeon gasped as she understood the implications. They eat minds. They consume the very essence of what makes a species intelligent. Yes, the keeper confirmed. Against such an enemy, even the precursors could not stand. But they had time for one final act of preservation, the seed protocol. New images showed the precursors' desperate final years. They selected 3 species that showed the greatest potential for growth and wisdom. Each species was carefully relocated to a safe world, far from the advancing Devourers. The first seed was placed in the Andromeda Galaxy, the keeper explained. The second seed was hidden in the depths of the galactic core, and humanity, the third seed, was placed on Earth in the galaxy's outer rim. "But why us?" Dong-hyun asked. "What made humanity special enough to save?" The keeper's expression became almost paternal. "Your species showed a unique combination of traits, intelligence combined with empathy, curiosity balanced with caution. Most importantly, you showed the capacity to work together despite your differences." Minho was studying the technical displays with growing excitement. "The technology here, it is incredible. Energy sources that could power entire planets, defensive systems that could protect solar systems, manufacturing capabilities that could build fleets of starships. All of this will be yours to command," the keeper said, "when you are ready. But first you must understand the full scope of your responsibility." The images changed again. showing present-day galaxy maps with ominous dark zones spreading from the galactic center. Warning signals flashed from dozens of monitoring stations. "The Devourers stir once again," the Keeper announced. "Our long-range sensors detect their advanced scouts probing the outer systems. They have spent 50,000 years rebuilding their strength, and now they resume their harvest of intelligence." "How long do we have?" J1 asked, his communication training making him focus on practical timeline issues. "Perhaps 50 years before their main force reaches the populated regions of the galaxy," the Keeper replied. "Time enough to prepare. If humanity proves ready to accept its destiny," the leader Guardian stepped forward. "Central AI, shall we proceed with the final verification protocols? The biological entities must complete the inheritance sequence before full system access can be granted." "Yes," the Keeper agreed. "But know this, children of Earth. What I offer you is not just advanced technology and ancient knowledge. I offer you the burden of guardianship. You will become the protectors of younger species, just as the precursors once protected you." Dongyun looked at his companions, seeing his own mixture of awe and determination reflected in their faces. They had come here as simple explorers. Now they were being asked to become humanity's representatives in a cosmic responsibility that stretched across millions of years. "What exactly does the final verification require?" he asked. The Keeper's smile was both sad and hopeful. "You must prove that humanity has learned the most important lesson the precursors tried to teach, that intelligence is precious, and those who possess it must protect those who are still learning to use it." Around them, the Guardians began to move in, new formations, preparing for whatever test would determine humanity's future role in the galaxy. The Keeper of Seed stood before them in the vast chamber, its holographic form radiating ancient wisdom and power. Captain Li Dongyun felt the weight of 50,000 years of history pressing down on him as he looked around at the incredible technology surrounding them. "The final verification is simple in concept but difficult in practice," the Keeper explained. "You must prove that humanity understands the true meaning of guardianship. It is not about having the strongest weapons or the most advanced technology. It is about knowing when to use power and when to show restraint." Dr. Kim Haeon stepped forward, her scientific mind processing everything they had learned. "What exactly are you asking us to do? How can we prove something like that?" The chamber around them shifted again, and suddenly they were looking at a real-time display of space around the Nexus. 3 dark ships were approaching at incredible speed. Their design was unlike anything in human databases. They seemed to bend light around them, creating distortions that hurt to look at directly. "Devourer scout ships," the leader Guardian announced. "They arrived 72 hours ahead of our projections. The awakening of the Nexus has drawn them here faster than anticipated." Park Minho watched his engineering scanners with growing alarm. "Captain, those ships are using some kind of space warping technology. They are moving faster than anything should be able to move in normal space. The Devourers consume not just biological life," the Keeper explained. "They feed on the energy patterns that create consciousness itself. Their technology is powered by the minds they have devoured over millions of years." Yoon Jae-won maintained contact with the new soul while monitoring the approaching threat. "Captain Park on the ship reports that the unknown vessels are not responding to any communication attempts. They appear to be scanning our ship and the structure." The Keeper turned its attention back to Dongyun. "Here is your test, Captain. I can give you immediate access to the Nexus weapon systems. You could destroy those scout ships before they report back to the main Devourer fleet. But doing so would require using technology that draws its power from the same source as theirs." "What do you mean?" Dongyun asked, though he was beginning to suspect he would not like the answer. "Precursor defensive technology at full power requires massive energy input," the Keeper said solemnly. "The most efficient source of such energy is consciousness itself, not the destruction of minds like the Devourers practice, but the willing sacrifice of mental energy from Guardian species. The implications hit them all at once. The robot Guardians around them were not just mechanical constructs. They were powered by the stored consciousness of precursors who had given their mental energy to protect future generations. "You are asking us to sacrifice our minds to power the weapons," Haeon said quietly. "Not your individual minds." The Keeper clarified. But portions of human consciousness freely given. The process is not fatal, but it would change your species forever. Some humans would need to become permanent guardians, their consciousness partially merged with the Nexus systems. Minho was studying the technical readouts with fascination and horror. The energy requirements are enormous. It would take the mental energy of thousands of humans to power the defensive systems at full capacity. But there is an alternative, the Keeper continued. A slower path that does not require such sacrifice. You could evacuate this system and let the scouts report back to the Devourer fleet. Then spend the next 50 years preparing humanity and the other young species for the coming war. 50 years, Jaewon repeated. How many species would the Devourers consume in 50 years? The display showed projections of Devourer expansion patterns. System after system fell to darkness as the calculations played out. Billions of intelligent beings would die while humanity prepared for war. The choice defines what kind of guardians you will become, the Keeper said. Will you sacrifice yourselves for immediate protection of others? Or will you choose the longer path that preserves your humanity but costs more lives? Dongyun looked at his companions, seeing his own internal struggle reflected in their faces. Everything they had learned about the precursors suggested they had faced the same choice and chosen sacrifice. The robot guardians around them were proof of that decision. There has to be another way, he said. What about partial activation? Could we power the defensive systems at reduced capacity without permanent sacrifice? The leader guardian processed this question for several moments. Partial activation would be sufficient to drive off the scout ships, but not enough to prevent their escape. The Devourer fleet would know of our location, but not our full capabilities. That might work in our favor, Heian suggested. If they think we are weaker than we really are, they might send a smaller force first. The Keeper nodded approvingly. Wisdom in strategy. Very well, but partial activation still requires mental energy contribution from your team. You will experience the Guardian bonding process. Part of your consciousness will become permanently linked to the Nexus systems. What does that mean exactly? Minho asked. You will gain access to precursor knowledge databases and technology interfaces, the Keeper explained. But you will also carry the responsibility of Guardian status. You will feel the suffering of any species under threat. You will know when intelligent beings are in danger anywhere in the galaxy. The weight of such awareness seemed overwhelming. To feel the pain and fear of entire civilizations, to carry the responsibility for protecting species they had never met. I will do it, Dongyun said quietly. If it means stopping those ships and protecting others, I will accept the Guardian bonding. Captain, no, Heian protested. We do not know what the long-term effects might be. We do it together, Minho said firmly. If our captain bonds with the Nexus, his crew bonds with him. We started this mission together and we will finish it together. Jaewon nodded in agreement. The communication networks alone would be worth the sacrifice. Imagine being able to coordinate defense efforts across the entire galaxy. The Keeper's expression showed both pride and sadness. You understand the true meaning of guardianship. Very well. Initiate partial bonding protocols. The chamber filled with golden light as the bonding process began. Dongyun felt his consciousness expanding, touching minds and systems across vast distances. He could sense the approaching Devourer ships like cold spots in the warmth of living space. But he could also feel something else. Other minds reaching back toward him. His crew, linking their thoughts with his. The robot guardians, sharing their ancient wisdom. And beyond that, the faint but hopeful thoughts of younger species throughout the galaxy, species that now had protectors watching over them. Partial defensive systems online, the leader guardian reported. Devourer scouts are within weapon range. Dongyun felt the power of the Nexus flowing through his bonded consciousness. With a thought, he could command weapons that could crack planets or shields that could protect entire solar systems. Fire warning shots, he ordered. Let them know they are not welcome here, but give them the chance to retreat. The Nexus weapons fired, precise beams of energy that passed close to the Devourer ships without touching them. The message was clear. Leave now or face destruction. The dark ships paused in their approach, scanning the energy signatures of the warning shots. After several minutes, they began to withdraw, but slowly, gathering as much information as possible. They are retreating, J1 reported. But they got what they came for. They know we are here now. Yes, the Keeper agreed. The age of hiding is over. Humanity has announced itself as the new guardian species. The galaxy will never be the same. As the Devourer scouts disappeared into hyperspace, Dongyun felt the full weight of what they had just begun. The robot guardians that had once threatened them now stood ready to serve under human command. The ancient AI that had tested them now offered its accumulated wisdom freely. Humanity had come to the stars as explorers and discovered they were meant to be protectors. The greatest adventure in their species' history was just beginning.